So whenever the question comes up if astrology is legit, you still get these professional debunkers, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson over here, who is basically a guy who he was an astrophysicist, but not like a real, inventor, scientist who found anything, just like a popularizer, basically, who nowadays he goes around and he goes on all these talk shows everywhere and he kind of spews this commonsensical knowledge that he has and that he's defending, and according to which astrology is nonsense because it doesn't kind of match up with the standards of science, which is still what a lot of people nowadays still believe, the ones who are still stuck in the old scientific materialist paradigm, basically the 1950s paradigms of science. They still believe that because it's still pretty widespread. So I'm going to just go ahead in this video and I'm going to respond to this guy because the stuff that he says is really representative of the kind of things that you're going to hear when people who haven't very deeply looked into it, when they kind of talk about why astrology is not legit, why it's fake, why it doesn't make sense, blah, blah, and so on, right? So listen to this guy.
When you go to your horoscope and you say, oh, what are you, Scorpio, this, you go straight to the Scorpio and it's written, oh, okay, that's going to happen to me. You should try it differently. Do the following. Get someone else to pick one of those horoscopes at random and read it to you. I've done this experiment. Yeah. I picked one at random, read it to a room of 100 people, and I'd say, did I just read your horoscope? 70% of the hands went up. So you realize that they're written in such a way that you can find the meaning that you know and need for yourself because of the way each one of those horoscopes are written. And you lift up the things that are most applying to you and you suppress in your mind the things that don't apply, and you walk away thinking that they're speaking to you because of what time of year you were born. And we've known about this. It's a psychological effect where we remember the hits and forget the misses. Like you pick up the phone and say, I knew it was you, Grandma. Well, how about all the times that you thought it was her and it wasn't? Those don't get remembered as an incident in your life. They get rapidly forgotten when you go.
Okay, so two things here. First of all, the guy's like, in his idea of astrology, he's literally referring to the sun sign astrology that used to have in magazines, and nowadays still you get it on some very cheap websites where it's just like, are you a Scorpio, are you a Cancer, then this is what's going to happen to you, right? Sun sign astrology is like the most basic form of astrology, which was invented by marketing people in the 20th century, and it has nothing of the real depth and the detail, the minute details that you get when you actually look at a real chart with all the asteroids and everything. It gets so detailed and so specific that it's exactly the opposite of what this guy's saying, right? So it's not just like this very generic thing that, okay, this is for 12 signs. It's for just 12 types of people, right? No, it gets extremely specific. If you actually went to a real astrologer, right, and if you looked at real astrology, what real astrologers are saying is so specific that you got your mind blown by the specificity. Like they're gonna talk about your specific problems with your injuries and your this that you have and the problems that you have in your relationship and so on and so forth. And it's the exact opposite of what this guy is saying. So you can see here, he has no idea what he's talking about. He never went to he didn't even take the effort. You're going to come and debunk so-called debunk a science or a practice field. You didn't even put in the time and the effort to go and speak to an actual real astrologer. You only looked at the magazine, newspaper, horoscopes, or whatever you found online, and that's it. That's what you base your opinion on, so that's super weak, number one. Number two, what he actually said there about, serendipities and synchronicities, also wrong. This guy also doesn't get psychic influences that exist, right? Because they exist. People actually know when they know somebody's calling them. Telepathy is quite widespread. It's not such a rare phenomenon. There has been statistic studies on this. So Dean Radin from Princeton, he has been showing this. There's an Institute of Noetic Sciences. They have done statistical studies showing that actually a lot of people have premonitions and telepathic cognitions, which is a real thing. This guy obviously doesn't know. He still lives in the 1950s where this is still crazy talk, right? So what else is he saying? Let's check it out. Let's check out what else he has to say.
They all have names Then you go to the astrologers' tables and they say, oh, this is the rain sign, or this is a drought sign. And they take the names of things, and those names are what they interpret based on where the moon is, the sun is, where the planets are, all whatever the angle configurations there are. And each angle has a certain latitude over which they'll count it as a hit rather than as a miss. And so this gives extraordinary capacity of the astrologer to tell you what's going on in your life.
So it's bullshit.
Yeah, Joe Rogan was actually playing you. He didn't notice, right? Because if you just watch the whole interview, you'll know that Joe Rogan knows much more of the real astrology rather than this guy, right? So what is he saying here? He's saying that there is a problem with the fact that the celestial bodies, they're named after the things that we interpret, right? We talk about Mars, and then Mars has a name, and it's after the god of war, Aries, Mars, right? And we talk about Venus is Aphrodite, is love, and so on and so forth, right? And the asteroids the same. We have like thousands of asteroids. They're named after certain things, and then that name is actually the essence of what we're talking about. So this is only a problem, this is only an issue if you're still living in a 1950s scientific materialist worldview where matter is dead and innate and has no meaning, right? Matter has no meaning, and it's just like dead matter. It's just objects. So that's just a rock flying there in the sky, and it has no meaning, right? Then it makes sense what he's saying. But science itself has moved far beyond this stance right now. We had a whole debate going on in science around the so-called hard problem of consciousness, where there was a philosopher, David Chalmers. He came and he said that he presented this to everybody. He said, like, look, our current understanding of matter and of the brain doesn't allow us to understand why consciousness exists in the first place. Consciousness is separate from material processes, and there has been no satisfactory explanation ever given by any materialist of why consciousness exists. And after this whole debate, what happened is that more and more real scientists, leading scientists, physicists, biologists, neuroscientists, today are accepting that consciousness is primary. They're accepting the primacy of consciousness, that consciousness is at the basic foundational level of reality, not matter, but consciousness, which is obviously what spiritual traditions have always been saying. And once you accept that consciousness is the fundamental stuff of reality, then it makes sense that the names of things have a meaning that allows you to interpret the symbolic reality of that thing. Because when we see that planet and that asteroid and we give it a name, it's in reality consciousness itself, naming itself. We are conscious, the planet is in the field of consciousness, right? And in the field of consciousness is naming its own patterns so that it makes sense to it, right? Then it makes sense. And then the saying, nomen est omen, makes sense, which the ancients used to say, the naming of a thing sets its symbolic frequency, right? Its archetypal frequency, which allows you to understand its value, right? Its worth, or its kind of energy that it has, right? So it makes sense if you don't have a 1950 views of science, but if you're actually understanding the fundamental nature of consciousness. And what he was saying that, yes, the different aspects, the angles, they allow you the latitude for the astrologer to interpret. Yes, of course, because reality is multifaceted. It's complex, right? Reality is complex. Psychology is complex. Humans, events are complex. And the complexity is mirrored in the astrology with all of the different angles and all of the different latitude, all of the different possible interpretations that exist, because reality itself has multiple values, right? But nonetheless, the archetypal power of a planet is super clear, is super unmistakable, and every astrologer will tell you Mars is about this, is about fighting, drive, and energy. And when you actually understand to read it, you will see that in the chart it actually means that, right? It actually shows that. And there were studies, people showed that a lot of, for instance, warriors, fighters, sports people, athletes, they have Mars on the ascendant, even statistically. So even statistically, this is true, right? So, okay, again, nothing. The guy just said nothing. Let's look at what else he has to say.
Well, people who write horoscopes, it's a big business. I'm still amazed that that's going on. Mm-hmm. Right, there are no alchemists running around. Alchemy predated chemistry, and astrology predated modern astronomy and astrophysics. So you would think they would just dissolve away. But astrology is still with this, and last I checked, there's not much alchemy going on out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think the universe cares about you enough to shape your personality, I don't know what else to tell you. Have you seen a picture of how small Earth and the solar system is in the galaxy? To then proceed to declare that something about this universe cares about you and your birthday. This is ego gone amok. Mars is in the sky, and I was born when that happened, so it is talking to me. That's ego for you.
All right, so the last thing the guy has to say is that it's egocentric perspective to think that, to have the hubris to believe that somehow the stars and the cosmos are related to you, right? He says like this is ego. The reality is that it's the exact opposite, which is true. It's the exact opposite. It is rather the scientific materialists and the atheists, right? Those people who basically they believe that we are just here floating on a rock randomly. Everything is random, has come into being without any purpose. We're not related to anything else. We're not connected authentically and organically to the cosmos and its evolution, but we're just rather an accidental byproduct of random processes, right? And there is no meaning out there. And everything we do is sort of disconnected from the cosmos because that's the scientific materialist view. That's the view that leads to egocentrism. That's the view that leads to elevating human ego above everything else because you think that there isn't any purpose in here, and all purpose that exists in the universe is that which humans have created themselves, what their ego has created themselves. That's what leads to egocentrism. On the contrary, if and when you know that your actions, your desires, your spirit, your evolution is embedded in planetary cycles, is embedded in the cosmos, you're part of something much larger. Just like everything else is part of the cosmic evolution. You are part of the cosmic evolution. The river is, the development of tectonic plates is, history is, everything else is embedded in cosmic evolution, right? That's the perspective that not just brings you sanity, but that makes you humble. That allows you to understand how you are part of something greater. And even from what you just mentioned, that when you look at how small you are in comparison to Earth, that's exactly what gives you a sense of wholeness, right? Once you understand that you're integrated part, an integral and integrated part of everything. So that's the spiritual perspective, right? Which is at the bottom and foundation of astrology. All right, so that's all I have to say to this guy. I wish him and all those who follow that perspective that they evolve, that they spiritually evolve. That's how you should go into these debates, right? When there's those debates going on, either don't go there, or when you go in there to spit some truth and some perspectives that allow people to evolve, right? Because you could have been with this perspective before. I know I was at some point, when I was growing up still. It was like with that perspective, and it's okay, it's fine. People grow out of it. And you can evolve and you can help people evolve. All right? Bless up yourself. Be well.